Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about something different, I guess something that I haven't talked about on this channel before, and that is my marriage story. So some of you might be wondering or thinking to yourself, I didn't know that you were married. Well, I'm not married. I'm not married anymore. So I did make a video recently talking about how I was having kind of like an identity crisis because my last name was still my ex-husband's last name, and I didn't choose, I didn't change it back. I did not know that I could change it back with the divorce, and since my husband was the one that filed, he had to go and do all of the legwork to file for it because I was and still am disabled. I guess he didn't add that into the whole divorce thing. I think when you go and file, you add it in, also like a name change and that kind of thing. So I had his last name up until the beginning of this year, actually a few months ago, and I think that would have made it like maybe 5 or 6 years after our divorce that I still had the name. And so I did that video talking about how I was kind of having an identity crisis. You know, we're sort of in the middle of a pandemic. What if something happens to me? And God forbid, I don't want to die with that last name. So I kind of had this weird, I need to do something about this. I need to like go and fix this now. And I started thinking about how I've never really told you guys the whole marriage story. And the reason I feel that this is relevant to the channel is because it has a lot to do with chronic illness. The reason we got married, or one of the reasons we got married, and then the reason we got divorced, all ties into chronic illness. And he also had some things going on, so I think it's pretty fitting for this channel. And it also, for those of you that are not here in the United States, this is going to be a uniquely American story because well, you'll see why. So I really haven't outlined this. I just kind of wanted to I guess kind of do it kind of off the cuff. We met when I was around 23, I believe. So I was already symptomatic, but I wasn't as bad as I am now. I knew something was going on with me, but nobody could really tell me what. And it had only been a few years. So I started having symptoms my senior year in college when I was around 21. So it had been a couple years. I met him right after, probably a few months after I had a really bad stomach infection that left me just really underweight, and just feeling strange. I went through treatment. I didn't feel any better. The doctors were like, "You're fine. You've cleared the infection." So I kind of met him as I was coming off of this huge flare of this infection, which looking back now, I should not have been reacting to that infection so in such an exaggerated manner. That was kind of like my first clue that there was something going on. Throughout our relationship, we were together for almost a total, I think from beginning to like the very, very end, it was about 7 years. And so we went through a lot of these kind of ups and downs. I had the acne situation, which you'll see a video on this channel for. My thoracic, a stiff person syndrome, the light sensitivity, almost all of my symptoms, the majority of my symptoms happened during this relationship with him. So he really was there from almost the very, very beginning to when I stopped developing more symptoms. I mean, I still have gotten worse, but like the neuromuscular symptoms, basically I developed all of them during my relationship with him, or most of them. So we moved in. I did get kicked out of my house eventually. I think I was around 26. There were some issues here. I've also talked about that on this channel. There are issues with my family. And so I was eventually kicked out of my house at 26. And I, stayed with him for a while. He was renting a room in somebody's house. And then, from there, we decided we need to get an apartment ASAP. And at that time, I had gotten my first full-time job. So I was like, we're good. I've got a full-time job. I think he was on his way to a full-time gig as well. I said, let's just do this. So we got an apartment. We found a month-to-month apartment, which in hindsight, that was a good idea, because I still wasn't at my worst yet. That was going to come soon. And if you've heard me talk on this channel, stress is typically a trigger. So I'm not surprised that my health just started falling apart soon after we moved into this apartment. I just had a lot of stress. Getting kicked out of my house, getting an apartment, getting a full-time job, all of that all at once. It all happened within like a couple of months. But I'm going to skip ahead. So I started getting a lot worse. I ended up getting fired from my job. I still didn't know what was wrong with me because I still didn't have my doctor yet. But eventually I found I guess I would consider her a Lyme literate doctor, even though she's technically not a specifically just for Lyme disease. She's an immunologist. And once, I don't think we were married when I first started seeing her, but it became pretty clear that, since I lost my job, he was still working and he actually had really good health insurance. And I think he was only working part time or something like that. And he already qualified for health insurance. So marriage had already been a topic of conversation. I kind of felt like we were going in that direction. Looking back now, I can see how immature I was, how immature we both were. We were around 27 or 28. And obviously, neither one of us had an example of a good marriage at home. And I mean, yeah, you look back and you go, man, we were not ready for that. But we had so much on our plate. His family was really, I guess they were religious. I mean, so is my family, but I don't know, his family was just very much, if you're going to be living together, you need to be married. And so he was getting a lot of pressure from them. My health was kind of getting worse. I think I started seeing this doctor in 2011, I think. And it was out of pocket because Lyme literate doctors they can't take insurance. But everything else, blood tests and stuff, I believe she could bill insurance. I think we were already married when I first started seeing her. I think we might have been, or by the time we went back for my test results, because I think it took a few months. I think by then we were married because we got married, I think April or May, something like that. So we basically got married because of pressure. We got married because his family was kind of being pushy about it. He started getting kind of pushy about it. And then my health was really just, I could just tell him like, I'm not going in a good direction. And so we talked about it, and he had other issues that we would find out later. We still didn't know at this point. So there was one huge piece of the puzzle that was missing, and we wouldn't find out until afterwards. And so eventually we came to that conclusion. He kind of backtracked. He got cold feet. But eventually I was like, look, what do you want? Like, I can't, you're being pushy. You want us to get married. Your family wants us to get married. But now you're backtracking and you're not sure. I said, we need to make a decision. And so eventually we did get married. We got married just by law, because I think maybe a month after we got married by law, that's when I started developing the light sensitivity. So I still hadn't developed all my symptoms. Things just kept getting worse. But fortunately, I had insurance, I think, by that time. And so that's when we started going and getting MRIs and seeing neurologists and seeing doctors. And then I think later on I found my Lyme literate doctor, or somewhere around that time. And so that, I think the following year, I didn't start Lyme treatment until the following year. But that was part of the reason why we got married. Now, the big thing, that was a big thing. Obviously, when you have a couple that both have issues, that's always going to be a problem. And I didn't know, but, I went through all of my Lyme disease treatment. I did 6 months of intravenous antibiotics, and didn't get better, kind of got worse. I was really thin by the end of that. And then after that, I think my doctor got me on IVIG, which is very expensive, very difficult to get. You definitely need insurance to be on that drug. And it was around this time, when I failed the antibiotic treatment, that I started noticing very strange behavior with my husband. He had always been a peculiar person. He had always been kind of different, kind of quirky. And I think sometimes when you're in love, or when you think you're in love, you just overlook it, or you just go, that's how that person is. And he was really good looking. He was really funny. And I think there was a sort of like self, what do you call it? Like, I was being critical with myself, because I thought to myself, what more do you want? You've got someone who's funny, who's sweet, he loves you to death, and you're still nitpicking because he's kind of weird, you know? And I remember I had a friend many years ago tell me that I was shallow. And those words echoed in my head forever. And I started thinking about that, in this situation with my husband. And I thought to myself, you know what? I am shallow, because he's not doing anything, to hurt me. He's only done good things. He's just kind of strange. And the strange behavior kept getting worse. And the reason I started noticing it even more is because we were living together now and spending more time together. And, once you're living with someone, you notice these things a lot more. So one day I was going through a magazine, and I started seeing this little quiz, this questionnaire for like ADHD. And at that point, my husband's behavior had been getting really intense, kind of obnoxious, a lot of complaining. I mean, just nonstop complaining about everything. He hated the apartment that we were living in. He hated everything. And, I took everything he said seriously, because, I thought he's not happy, and so I would tell him, like, do you want to move? We're not on a lease, we can leave. And then he'd go, no, no, no. Like, he would totally just flip flop. It was really weird. And then the marriage issue never resolved. We were married, but we weren't married by the church. So his family continued to give him a hard time. So that I didn't stop hearing about the marriage thing. So I thought, we're killing two birds with one stone. I've got medical insurance. Your family's going to be happy that we're married. And it never stopped. It just became, when are you guys going to get married? When are we going to get the priest? We can get the priest. We can bring them to your apartment. They can marry you in the apartment. I mean, it was really one of those things. And once somebody starts pushing you that much, you just don't want to do that anymore. When people start pressuring you to do something, and especially when you're sick and you're not feeling good, you almost fight it even more. Like, I don't think I would have fought it half as much. I think if his family wouldn't have said anything, we would have eventually just gone to the priest on our own. And I mean, we did go to the priest. We went to different priests. So, I was on IVIG for about a year. We got him the help that he needed, and it wasn't helping. We did couples counseling. We got him on some medication. He did get diagnosed with ADHD, which was actually the third time. He had been previously diagnosed twice when he was younger. Never came up in over 6 years of a relationship. We never once talked about it. He never told me. And so I got him diagnosed a third time, which, again, that's more money. I mean, we were just bleeding money everywhere, because now we needed to pay, because a lot of ADHD treatment is out of pocket as well. Our counseling was like kind of out of pocket. All of my medical stuff is out of pocket. I mean, we were just, hemorrhaging money. Sorry, I thought I heard something. So finally, after a year, he lost his job. And once he lost his job, I knew I was going to lose my insurance. And he was going to lose his insurance as well. So we were both going to be screwed. He was going to lose his medication. I was going to lose mine, which I actually had started seeing improvement. I had gained weight. Things were getting better. But the stress that he knew he had to maintain this job in order for me to keep this medication and the insurance, I think that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. He did find an even better job afterwards. And here's the part where, this was when I knew, I was like, there's no way that we're going to survive, because he can't do this. He absolutely can't do this. So he found a better job. He lasted a week. It was going to be a higher paying job. It was going to be a better position. He was going to have full medical benefits again. Lost it within a week. He just couldn't do it. One thing that I learned, I read a lot about ADHD, particularly ADHD within a couple. One thing I learned is that when they feel that they're under pressure, under stress, they tend to fumble a lot. And so I knew that he was just going to continue to fumble. The medication was helping, but not enough. And he was refusing to do anything else. He was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm not doing any other treatments. His family was very critical of it. They were calling him like a drug addict, things like that. So what did I learn from all of this? What did I learn about marriage? I learned that family support is crucial. And we didn't have family support from either family. We definitely didn't have it from his family. They started telling him to leave me and to divorce me. And divorce is actually permitted in his religion. I'm Catholic. He was Coptic Orthodox, which I guess is similar, but I believe that they're okay with divorce. I think you have like a certain quota. I think like 3 divorces or something. I don't know. I know a little bit about it, but not that much. And so, but we didn't get married in any religion. So his family was pushing for divorce. My family didn't care. They were just like, if you're going to get divorced, get divorced. They weren't going to judge me for it. But we didn't really have support on either side. We were on our own. So if I needed to be taken to an appointment or anything like that, it was me and my husband. If we needed help with groceries, it was me and my husband. We had 0 family support. And that's a big one. I mean, we had no support physically and no support emotionally. No, they just didn't care if we were together or not. And I think my family's philosophy is, once you're married, you're that person's problem. So we don't care what's going on in your life. Sorry, that was a door downstairs that scared me. And his family was like, you guys shouldn't be together at all. So, now looking back, I should have seen that from the beginning. But they were so nice to me. I didn't see, they just totally flipped. But that's one big thing. And I've heard that said a lot, that you're not just marrying that person, you're marrying their family. And that is very true. And it is very unfortunate, because I feel sorry for anybody that ends up marrying me, because, it's not a good situation. The other thing I learned was that love doesn't pay the bills. And I was always one of those people that believed that all you needed was love. That all you needed was to be in a loving relationship, and that would just, everything else would fall into place. But as long as the two of you loved each other, you would lack for nothing else. And I think the reason I thought that was because I grew up watching a marriage where there was no love, no compassion, absolutely nothing. And both are bad, but you definitely need money. And I see this now, and, looking now, when I look, I'm not really looking for any relationship, but now when I do look at prospective partners, when I see that the person has like unstable employment, or if they're still living with family, it is very expensive to live right now. I can't judge anybody for living with their family. I live with my family, but I start to look at how they handle their money. That is a huge, huge thing. And if a person does not handle their money well, which my husband didn't, and he actually kind of hid some things from me. It wasn't a big deal, but once we moved in together, I started to see that he had difficulty handling money, and he wasn't willing to hand off the responsibility to me, which, that both of those things are a problem. If he would have said, you know what, I don't want to manage the money, you do it, things would have probably been okay. But that was also one thing that he was just really paranoid about. He was like, I don't want you. He thought that I was going to like steal his money. And it's like, no, I just don't want us hemorrhaging money like this. So those are the 2 big things that I learned. And they were really, big things. And I think my advice to anybody, I shouldn't be giving out advice. I'm divorced, but my advice is to pay attention to those two things. Pay attention to family and pay attention to the way that they manage money. What was I going to say? One last thing. My divorce is the single best decision I have ever made in my life. And I say that I had a very good divorce, which is something that I don't hear a lot of people say. I had a very, very good divorce, very amicable. We were still friends for a while after. But unfortunately, I'm still dealing with financial fallout from that divorce, which I recently discovered. Some tax related stuff. So don't think that just because you get divorced that you've actually been able to shake off all the issues. They will follow you. So when you get married to someone, and especially if you're chronically ill, you really need to pay attention to those things. I know sometimes being chronically ill, we think to ourselves, we may not deserve a good person, or, we shouldn't be asking for so much. But I've become even pickier now that I'm sick, because I have seen the consequences of not being, picky and not really vetting who I'm with. And it is a sad thing to say, but yeah, you do have to look at how much money they make. You do have to look at the way that they manage their money. You do have to look at the way that they treat other people, the way that their families treat other people. And sometimes we just don't think about that. We just think of the attention that this person is giving us in that moment. And I think that's my fatal flaw, that I was taken with the way he was treating me in the beginning. And I didn't stop to think that eventually he was going to treat me just like everybody else. And that special treatment was not going to last. So that is my marriage story. It is horrible that people are getting married just for medical insurance in this country. I didn't marry just for that, but that was definitely a catalyst, I guess. I don't think, had my illness not progressed, I don't think I ever would have gotten married. I think I would have seen these issues before getting married. And I was also very, very anti-marriage. But I would have seen these issues prior to getting married. And I think I would have made a different decision. So that's what I got for you guys today. I hope this helps somebody, especially if you are in a relationship and you do want to get married. If you're chronically ill, it is essential for you to pay attention to these things. As much as we don't want to, and as much as we don't want to be alone, sometimes it's better to be alone than to end up dealing with the fallout of a marriage for years and years. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave comments down below, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.